First and foremost, I will say they're just as scary as they look. Every single time I get up there, I am just as nervous as you think you would be if you were sitting in that same position.
I'm excited. I've been waiting for this day for a while. CCM Magazine, we're going to have some unique interviews. We're going to have some really unique people come on board and talk about their journeys, their lives, their stories. But today, I am joined by Andrew Johnson, a.k.a. You know him, the man behind the horns from the Houston Texans. This is Toro, the guy in the suit. But if you are like me and you've been following Andrew for a long time, it doesn't just end with Toro. But here's the deal. We originally met when you were like a kid at a Christian music festival. 20 years ago, probably.
Smithville, Missouri.
Yes, and I had Aaron Schust here last week, and we hadn't seen each other pretty much since then. And now I'm talking to you again, and it's so exciting because at that time, you were already an entertainer. You were already doing so much even as a kid that you made quite the impact on a lot of us. So when I found out that you were up for the Mascot Hall of Fame, and knowing that our relationship, our friendship began at a Christian music festival, I thought, we got to rally our troops. We got to rally people around it. So tell me about this. Let's start there. Then we'll go back and hear your story. Because for those that only stick around for a couple minutes, we got to get people motivated right now to get Toro in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So, people probably don't think that this is a real thing, but the Mascot Hall of Fame does exist. It started as just a virtual Hall of Fame where you could go to mascothalloffame.com, and that's where you would see all the inductees. We are really wanting to get Toro in the Mascot Hall of Fame. There's some really great characters in there. There's the iconic characters like the Philly Fanatic, the Famous Chicken, the Phoenix Suns Gorilla, the guys that kind of started the idea of having mascots at sporting events were in that inaugural class. And then there's only 3 NFL guys in there currently. You've got the Chiefs mascot, the Jaguars mascot, and the Colts mascot. So we're hoping to be the 4th NFL mascot in the Mascot Hall of Fame. But very hopeful this is our year.
I think it's going to be your year. And you get people, this is fan voted. We get behind you and every day people can vote for the next week or so, right? How long do we have?
Yeah, so it's a 2-week campaign. We're in the middle of it right now. So the campaign opened on May 11th, and then it closes on the 24th. So you can vote once every 24-hour period at mascothalloffame.com.
That's great. Make sure you vote for Toro. You'll see him on there. And if you haven't followed Andrew or Toro's accounts, you should, because it's so much fun. Like I told you, we are here in Nashville. We are, I live in a household of Tennessee Titans fans, fanatics. However, Toro is by far, and not just because we know each other, Toro, just due to the amazing stunts you do, the social media posts that you've made, your professional wrestling debut, Toro has become our favorite mascot to follow, specifically in the NFL. And that has got to be cool for you to know that it's even getting outside of the Texans fan base, that this love for this character, one, it's a great looking character, like from a design standpoint, but also you are pulling off just the wildest stunts, and watching your practice videos, getting a peek behind the curtain has been crazy. But how does it feel not only to have this honor potentially to be in the Hall of Fame, but to know that this character almost has transcended just Texans fans?
Ultimately, that's the goal here. Is Toro's an ambassador for the Houston Texans, and we're trying to bring people in. We want to create fans for life, and so hopefully this is just an introduction to who we are as an organization. So, like I said, that's the ultimate goal. Is hopefully they fall in love with Toro and fall in love with the Texans, and it's really, really cool to hear that we've got Toro fans all the way out in Tennessee, and having social media. It's not just fans in Houston or around the country. It's all over the world. And so we've taken trips. We played in London a couple of years ago. We've played in Mexico City. And I have conversations, or, I'll just be running around in costume and people will see Toro and they'll reference different things that we've posted on social media. And so just the power of the internet is crazy, and it's fun to see that we've got fans all over the place.
Let's take a peek behind the curtain a little bit when it comes to creating those stunts, creating these moments, flying a Tennessee Titans fan out of your stadium. All of these things that have happened. What is it like? What's the creative process like? 'Cause we hear a lot from our songwriter friends, our Christian music guys that come in and tell their stories of this. But it's got to be a very creatively fulfilling gig to be Toro.
It is, and this is a full-time job for myself, and I'm actually a full-time department of 2. So there's 2 of us that work in the Team Toro department. And the creative process, I always get the question from people like, what do you do during the off season? This is a full-time job. So when you're not playing football games, what the heck are you doing? And so that's what we're doing. We're preparing for the season that's coming up here in 25, and our preparations for the 25 season have already begun. We host what I call an Idea Palooza. Calling it a brainstorm is not any fun. So we call it Idea Palooza, and that's where we come together collectively. We bring in people from inside the organization and people from around the industry that come in and help us just brainstorm, what do we want to do this season? How can we take things to the next level? What we did in the 24 season is gone. We got to come up with something to really shock people and take things to the next level in the upcoming season. And so really excited about what we've got on the docket for the 25 season and can't wait to bring it to fruition this fall.
Is that pretty common? I know we'll talk a little about your history, but is that pretty common within the mascot world or even these in the NFL world where it seems like the Texans have treated the character Toro, but also created these moments, have spent a lot of time respecting the stunts and everything that you've done, embracing it maybe more than I see a lot of the other teams. Is that something that feels fairly unique to the Texans, or is it something that maybe we just don't see behind the curtain as much in that world?
No, I think I'm very fortunate to work for an organization that really values what we do here in the mascot world. The organization has given us the resources we need, anything and everything from financially supporting different initiatives to it's a van, it's a school program equipment, it's these stunts, it's any kind of resource we need, they've put behind us, and they really do support everything that we do. And so I'm just very thankful to the Texans organization for seeing what we do and really believing in what we do. And I'm glad that's recognized.
It absolutely is. Now, in following your journey and being, a friend from afar for many, many years, it was very cool to watch your progression. And I think for people that maybe don't know your story, and you talk about the Kansas Chiefs mascots in the Hall of Fame, there's a story involving how that really started to inspire you, but also that you're a family man, you're doing so much work in the community. It's really great, but you did not start as an NFL mascot. The mascotting process, I mean, I have been following, I feel like you in, let's just say 6 or 7 different suits, I feel like, over the course of your career. I don't know if people are that aware of this sort of career path opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's a really weird story. I'm born and raised in Kansas City, and my parents were always pushing me to play sports. They wanted me to play baseball and they wanted me to play soccer, but instead of doing much playing on the field, most of my playing involved practical jokes and goofing around with my friends while I was sitting on the bench. So never would have imagined that my job as a bench warmer would lead to a job in the National Football League, but hey, here we are. So the journey really started when I was in the 5th grade. At my elementary school, we were heading down to the cafeteria for a assembly program, and the mascot for the Chiefs came running into the room, and he's a big goofy looking wolf, and people sometimes say he looks like Chuck E. Cheese. That's kind of true. So he works his way to the front of the room, and then he breaks the number 1 mascot rule. He starts to take his costume off in front of all of the kids in attendance. So out pop 2 human hands, off comes the wolf head, and you meet the man underneath the costume. He's a man by the name of Dan Mears, who is still the Chiefs mascot to this day. I think he just wrapped up like season 35 with the Chiefs, which is just truly unbelievable. Yeah. He's the GOAT in the mascot world, in my opinion. But during his presentation, he talked about his really cool job with the Chiefs and all the really cool things that he's done, the places he's traveled, and the people that he's had the opportunity to meet. And then he ties his message into something educational. And I don't remember what educational message he brought that day. I just remember thinking, like, that's the coolest job in the world, and that's something that I would want to do at some point in my life. Very end of his presentation, he lets one of the kids try on his costume, and I was the kid that was randomly selected to try on the costume. And so that was the moment of inspiration that I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I wanted to be a professional mascot. And I remember running home from school and flinging the door open and telling my parents what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And they thought it was a phase that I would ultimately grow out of. And at the age of 34, I still haven't grown out of that phase. So
here we are. I mean, that is such a wonderful story. And as someone who obviously has a belief in destiny and calling and everything that God could do in your life, clearly that moment, I mean, that is like as God wink defined as you could have it here. That you're the one who gets to be put on this costume, and then we flash forward 30 or 20 years, and you are potentially the most popular mascot in professional sports in America, at least. And when I look at that, it's just it's a wonderful story. But again, your first step wasn't then, okay, now I go audition for the NFL, and now I get to become an NFL mascot. You were in the minor leagues and all of these different sports, and I'd follow each and every step. So how did you say, okay, I mean, what is that first step into becoming a professional sports mascot?
There was a lot of blood, sweat, especially,
Yeah.
and tears to get to this moment. My first real opportunity came in high school, and so I was the mascot at my high school for 3 years. And it was while in high school I realized that guys actually got a scholarship to do this at different universities across the country. And so I started talking to different cheer coaches and universities, and ultimately ended at a small Division II school about 2 hours north of Kansas City. And it was while I was going to school, I was getting my degree in broadcasting because I thought I was going to be like you, Logan. Be on the radio or be on TV or whatever. So I was getting my degree in broadcasting that I realized people actually made their living doing this. So I ended up transferring to a university back in Kansas City and just started working with all the different professional teams in town. And I mean, I was just so thankful for those opportunities because it was the networking and the experience that ultimately landed me where I am. But I was working with a minor league hockey team, running their mascot program in a big googly-eyed horse costume. Had never been to a hockey game before I got hired there, and now I absolutely love the game of hockey. There's nothing better. Then I went to work for the Chiefs. So that same guy that came to my elementary school, I ended up becoming a backup for him. And a lot of people don't realize that these guys have backups.
Yeah,
He's a family man who's got 3 kids, and a lot of the events that we're doing are nights and weekends. And so he wanted to be involved in their sporting events or school activities. And so I was filling in for about 100 events a year for him. Worked for the Royals, our baseball team. I was the mascot handler. I wasn't actually tall enough to wear the costume with the Royals. And so I got to run around the baseball park and make sure people weren't pulling on his tail and making sure he was in position for all the different promotions that he was involved in for the big screen. So that was really fun. I worked for our Major League Soccer team, working all the different soccer games. And so I'm going to school, but then, I'd roll in after class and I'd have 3 costumes in my car because I didn't know what the next activity was going to be or what the appearances were going to look like that afternoon. But it was super fun. No 2 days were ever the same. So ultimately, I graduate college, and parents are like, "Hey, congratulations! You've earned that degree. Now it's time to go get a real job." So I've been fortunate enough to avoid a real job up until this point. But my first full-time job, I moved to Dallas and worked for the Stars NHL team. They had never had a mascot before, so I got to debut their new mascot. Thought I would be there for 10, 15, 20 years, but that's when the Texans called. And hockey, they've got 41 home games, and in the NFL, you've got 10 home games. And so coming back to the NFL, which is where I was inspired to do this, was always a dream. And so it's been a dream come true ever since. And I just wrapped up my 10th season with the Texans. And like I said, I'm just living my dream every day, and just feel so blessed to be able to call this my job.
It is amazing, Andrew, to hear this story and to talk to you, because I think a lot of people don't even know that, hey, it's mostly, like you said, you have a backup, but there's a guy, like there's a lead Toro, there's a lead mascot. I think these are, maybe people think it's like a Disney character where it's like, oh, there's 20 Mickey Mouses running around. It's not what it's like in these sports, because honestly, looking at the amount that you have to train, I think people don't even understand that, whether it's setting up these stunts. And again, I've seen some of your rehearsal videos where, you're doing very dangerous things. Yes, I'm sure they're secure and they're safe, and you're doing, you have a great team with you, but you're talking about, rappelling in from the top of these stadiums, and you're showing the views. And it's, for me, I'm watching it and my stomach is just going, oh, so what is that training process like? I know obviously you got to keep yourself in shape, just the sweat alone. I'm sweating here having this interview with you. I can't imagine having a 40-pound mascot suit on and then saying, okay, now I got to be entertaining for all the families, and I'm going to, jump out of a helicopter and land on a four-wheeler. And, it just feels like Toro is always doing these things. So what's that process like from just a physicality point of view?
First and foremost, I will say they're just as scary as they look. Every single time I get up there, I am just as nervous as you think you would be if you were sitting in that same position. It is nerve-wracking. You're walking up there on the catwalk, and they've got these handrails, and you're like, okay, these railings and these things are in position for a reason. You're not supposed to go over them. And so I always get butterflies. I always get nervous before we do a stunt. Secondly, you talked about doing this in a costume. I do think that the costume helps with the nerves, because when you're not in a costume, you're looking around, you're looking down, you're looking up. And in that costume, I have limited vision. Now, this costume, I'm very fortunate to have pretty good vision compared to some of the other costumes I've been in, where it's a big block I see out at the mouth. And so you lose your peripheral vision, and you just can focus on what's directly in front of you. And so I do think that actually helps when you're trying to get in position for these stunts. You're not focused on everything. You don't have time to really be like super nervous about what's happening. You can only focus on what's directly in front of you. But each one of these stunts, there's a lot of coordination that happens. And a lot of people see the 30-second or the 15-second recap we post on social media, but they don't see all of the work that transpires in order to get to that point. And so these are the times, like our schedule actually comes out tonight. I'm not sure when you guys are going to hear this, but the NFL schedule is released tonight. And so once that schedule's released, we're going to sit down as a creative team and figure out what dates we want to do stunts. And then we have to work with our stunt crew to go to contract with them on those dates. They're based out of Arizona, so we have to fly them in every single time they come rig up one of our stunts. And so once we get that contract signed, it's booking airfare. And then once we get close to those games, there's a lot of coordination. People don't think about the shared airspace above the stadium. And so we're having to coordinate with Skycam, that camera that's flying around to capture those aerial pictures of the football players. We're having to coordinate with them because you don't want any of those ropes to cross at any given time. And so every rehearsal, when they're up there rigging those stunts, like we have to coordinate every single one of those movements with Skycam. And then last year we had a new hurdle. We played on Christmas Day and it was a Netflix game. And Beyonce was the halftime performer. Well, Beyonce puts on a really incredible show, but she had all these different things that were hanging from our ceiling. She had different lighting fixtures, and she herself did a stunt at the very end of her show. She got lifted up, all sorts of lights and equipment and everything that were hanging from the top of the building. So we were scheduled to do a stunt, and so we're having to work around what she already has up there and working with Skycam. And they had a 2 Skycam rig. So I had never worked with 2 Skycams, and so you're trying to worry about all these different wires and things that are hanging out in the ceiling. And so ultimately, to get that stunt landed on game day, there's just a lot of coordination. It takes a lot of work, but it's always worth it. When you hit the ground, and you hear the crowd erupt. Like it's a pretty cool moment.
Well, I mean, for a Netflix game too, I'd imagine, because I was watching that. We were not even in the country, and I was watching that game. I imagine that okay, I don't care if it's Beyonce. Toro's got to do something cool. We can't just come out here and just say, okay, here's Toro. He's known for this. You're known for this, for these big stunts. You're not going to let that opportunity slide.
You got to capitalize on the moment. We had a really big Sunday night football game, and we're very fortunate that the team is just rocking it down on the field and super excited to see what they do this season. And so to be able to capitalize on what they're doing is super exciting. So hopefully we get some really great primetime games this season, and we can do some more fun stunts to keep these fans on their toes here at NRG Stadium.
Well, let's move a little bit outside of Toro because again, I follow you as a human being beyond Toro. I've seen your family life. You've got kids, wife. I'm seeing your posts from church, all the different things. What's that like in terms of how this world that you live in interacts with that family life that you've also built? Because, like you said, it's a limited amount of games, which I assume is better for you in that sense. But it's still an exhausting job, I can imagine. And I'm just curious about the personal life side of that.
Yeah. And I mean, I always get questions. I talked about the offseason. People always wonder what the offseason looks like. And we keep just as busy during the offseason as we do during the season. I talked about some of the preparations, but we're constantly doing events. I just did our recap from last season. We did over 500 events last year. That's in Houston, that's throughout the state of Texas, and all over the country. We're constantly traveling and all over the place. And so it is a really, really busy schedule. We're working with our corporate partners and our community partners and just anything and everything you can possibly imagine. We're out there and doing it. And so you can probably imagine that work-life balance is really tricky, especially being in the entertainment business where we work when other people aren't, because that's when they want to be entertained. And so trying to balance, faith and family is challenging. I've got 2 kids of my own. I've got a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and got married in 2019. And so, yeah, it's a lot to balance, but I think you just have to make sure that you keep your priorities straight. God comes first, my spouse, my kids, and then my job. And it's a tough balance, but just have to understand the priority and make sure that God comes first and everything after that.
That's awesome. Does your 4-year-old understand that Daddy's Toro? Has that clicked yet?
Yeah, so I was doing an event, and I think she was like 1.5 or 2, and she was terrified, like most kids are in that stage of life.
Right.
They're just terrified of these oversized costumes. So like, that is not normal.
Yeah.
So it was a weird feeling being her dad and her being scared of me. Yeah. And so I take the costume off and then had to explain to her. She loved Halloween. She loved putting costumes on. And so I had to explain to her, this is just what Daddy does. It's Halloween basically every day for me. I'm just putting on a costume like you do. And ever since that point, she's understood what it is, and she's not scared, and she loves Toro. Now, my son's 1.5. He doesn't really understand what's going on.
He doesn't get it yet. But well, what about that? Because you're interacting so much with kids. You're having these. Are there moments that are just unreal? I see obviously celebrities and that kind of things, but moments with kids, I can imagine as this mascot and all the kind of events you do, some which I'm sure are easier than others in terms of what you're having to deal with. Because I'm sure Toro makes appearances in places where there are kids in need, where things are happening like that. Does that experience, I'm sure it impacts you. That's not a smart question, but what is that like to know that you're bringing joy to people who are, especially kids that are sometimes in some pretty rough stuff?
No doubt. And I mean, that's my favorite part of my job is that no 2 days are ever the same. You just never know where you're going to go or what you're going to do. But I will say, I think one of the things I'm most proud of during my job with the Texans is we have a school show that we do. It's called Toro Takes the Bull Out of Bullying. And growing up as a kid, I was bullied, and I probably shouldn't have been as vocal about what I wanted to be when I grew up, because there's not a whole lot of kids out there that want to become professional mascots.
Like, I'm
But
starting a
sometimes
Christian radio channel, music channel, and I am going to be a mascot. You know.
Kids weren't always super kind when they found out what my goals and what my dreams were. And so being able to take that show on the road, we activated 30 different schools across the city of Houston with that program, teaching kids what the acronym stands for: be yourself, use your voice, leave, and look out for others. And so being able to take that message out, not only just that important message about how to deal with bullying, but being able to take the Texans out to these kids. And I think about how my journey started. It's kind of full circle of being able to take the Texans out to these kids who, some of them may not ever be able to come to a Texans home game. So being able to bring the Texans to them, allow them to experience what Texans football is all about, and hopefully creating that next generation of fan, I think is pretty special. So I think that's my favorite part of my job, is getting to go out there and do these school programs and bring the Texans to these kids all across the city.
I think that's perfect. I think it's perfect for your attitude and everything you've brought. And I've also seen, like I said, all these celebrities and people that come to you, Christian celebrities and not, and everyone. I feel like you're getting a lot of interesting FaceTime, but not really, because it's Toro with a lot of these really prominent names, and even prominent names in the Christian music world I've seen.
Yeah, no, I was really, really excited. I actually pitched an anthem probably 2 or 3 years ago. Taryn Wells was here in Houston because he was working at Lakewood Church. And
Right.
I was like, he's here in Houston. We've got to ask him, because we're big Taryn Wells fans in our family. And so our team put out the ask, and he ended up coming out and singing the anthem. So I was able to meet him. And then we actually crossed paths with Forrest Frank, who, I mean, just unbelievable. My kids love his music, and the idea of not having to think about the lyrics, and the lyrics being so positive and uplifting. I love when my kids are in the car singing his songs, because they've got such a good message. And so I think that's super cool, where, my two worlds get to collide there. But then we've also had fun interactions, like Simone Biles. She came into our world before she was Simone Biles. We had her out here before she actually went to her first Olympics games.
Wow.
And so she's been in our Texans family ever since then. And then I got to shake hands with President George H.W. Bush.
Yeah.
He and his wife Barbara Bush were Houston residents, and would come to our games back when he was living. And so this little kid from Kansas City never thought I'd shake hands with a living president.
Yeah, the photo ops alone that you post are just wild. Like I said, obviously the kids love Forrest and all that, but you're meeting a president, and of course you're meeting him in probably the most interesting way, which is as a big blue bull, which is great, which is awesome. You also, I said, we got mutual friends in AEW. You've made your professional wrestling debut recently.
That's right.
So, I mean, again, I told you, I said, there are similarities to the professional wrestling world and what you do, just from the entertainment, the stunt aspect of it. But to see you come out, make your appearance, have your mask on, over your mask on, was pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up as a wrestling fan. I have friends that were wrestling fans that were always trying to get me into it. And here for the last couple of years, like working in production, all my production friends say, you have got to go to a WWE match so that you can see just the sheer entertainment and the sheer production value of what this event is. And so I got to go to my first SmackDown probably 3 years ago, and I have just been hooked ever since. And then one of the wrestlers, her name's Thunder Rosa. She's based out of San Antonio. We've become really good friends with her, just with her involvement in the Texans. She came out last season, and she actually put on like a luchador wrestling event outside of our stadium before the game. And so we got the opportunity to be involved in that. And they gave us a little bit of training on some of the wrestling moves and the safest way to do things there. So we developed a relationship with her. And then I got to be a part of her intro. She texted me the week that they were doing a show here in Houston and said, would you come out of the tunnel with me for my introduction? I'm like, that is a no-brainer. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the best thing for Toro. And the last, look, we got to promote again to get you in the Hall of Fame. And I saw probably the most my kids have been jealous of being one person away is also you had the short king himself, Ryan Trahan, giving you the endorsement. Again, someone, if you're not familiar with Ryan, by the way, I know he's a Texas guy, one of the biggest YouTubers on the planet. And again, so you're getting some heavy hitters here trying to get you in the Hall of Fame. And that's why we're telling everybody, you got to go do it.
Hey, we even called Logan Sekulo to get us on. So, I mean, we're calling in We're calling in the heavy hitters.
Me,
but no, we
Ryan
just appreciate
Trahan,
the
very
support.
similar amount of subscribers.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. So
but no, any and all support, it means the world. Thank you for this opportunity to be on the show, and thank you for helping generate some votes for us.
we got to push it. Like, guys, if you're watching this, I'm fully backing Toro. I think the CCM crowd needs to. We're going to put this in our email blast. We got to make this happen. Andrew's got to go, not Andrew, but Toro's got to go in the Hall of Fame. I think it's very important. I think it also is just a great connection point for our audience. And Andrew, it's been awesome to chat with you. So where do they go again? To Mascot Hall of Fame. They vote for the next
MascotHallOfFame.com.
Yeah.
And you can vote once every 24 hours right there on their website. And your support means the world to us.
All right, let's do it. Let's get Toro there. All right. Thank you, Andrew, for taking a few minutes out of your day.
Man, can't thank you enough for the opportunity.